Vice News is over. It was a long time coming, if you ask me. They've done some pretty great things, and this is specifically about HBO. There's still going to be their YouTube channel. Who knows what they're doing? I'm hearing from one of the reporters that there is a plan to try and sell the show to someone else, so the show may still exist. But HBO has officially ended the Vice program, and now Vice News tonight. For those that aren't familiar, I am the founding member of Vice News. Before, I was the first person brought on, and based on a speech given by Shane Smith, the CEO of Vice, at the Knight Foundation Innovation Awards, he said that they didn't necessarily have the intention to do news until I came in and kind of paved that path. They brought in a bunch of other people who helped build it. I don't want to act like I deserve more credit than I do. By no means. There was substantially more people brought on to launch Vice News, but I was number one. And I kind of created that ability for them to do it. It's over. Vice News has been canceled on HBO. Now, I had nothing to do with the HBO show. I was gone around the time they were launching that. But there's some really important things here. It's going to be an addendum to the video I did on my main channel today, just talking more about this specific instance. And there's some comments from Vice News staff, as well as a journalist, I believe a journalist, who went through why news is dying. Before we get started, go to timcast.com/donate. If you'd like to support my work, there are multiple ways you can donate. But in these trying times, it's great if you do, because a lot of people are losing their revenue, getting demonetized, and outside of that, like, comment, share the video. If you want to support my work, the engagement really helps. They say former New York Post publisher, that's from the Hollywood Reporter, by the way, former New York Post publisher Jesse Angelo is joining Vice to oversee the news, digital, and television divisions. HBO has canceled Vice News tonight, putting an end to its 7-year relationship with Vice Media. Wow, I can't believe it's been that long. It was the end of 2012 when I started talking to Vice. It was mid-2013 when I joined, and now it's over. The architect of that show, news chief Josh Tirangel, will depart Vice this summer after nearly 4 years of, per a memo he sent to staff, harrowing challenges and huge highs with the company. Amid the changes at Vice News, CEO Nancy Dubuc, I don't know how to pronounce her name, has tapped Jesse Angelo, the former chairman and CEO of the New York Post, for a newly created role overseeing news, television, and digital at Vice. She announced the staffing changes in an email to Vice employees Monday morning. Jesse is joining us to create expanded platform opportunities and franchises for all of our great talent and content we are making every day. The shakeup comes 1 year into Dubuc's tenure as CEO. News is among her 5 focus areas at the company, which also include cable network Viceland, which apparently has been doing really, really poorly. The editorial sites under Vice Digital. Angelo's hiring, she explained, will allow her to strengthen the relationship between those 3 divisions. Here's the thing. It was recently announced that several Vice brands were being collapsed. Yes, I can't remember exactly which ones, but like Broadly, I think, was one of them. And they're being put under the Vice main vertical, Vice.com, because it seems Vice peaked. Their expansion has stopped, and now they're retracting, and this is more bad news for Vice. So I want to make sure it's clear. I feel really bad to a certain extent, because there was so much great opportunity there, and they did do great things. When I was there, a ton of awesome things happened. Some of the coverage I did got millions and millions of views. We were featured on television advertisements. I remember my cousin telling me one day she was watching Hulu and all of a sudden heard my voice and got confused and saw this commercial. I was featured. I got featured in commercials for Vice. It was amazing. I even had one of my documentaries was featured on a billboard. It was awesome stuff. But something happened around the time I left, and they started to just kind of downward spiral towards regressive identitarianism. I think because it was cheap content, but I think it's the track that we see these news organizations following because it's cheap and effective. It makes money for them. They say that HBO has been the exclusive television home for Vice News, a relationship that at times proved fraught for both companies, especially when Vice, under then CEO Shane Smith, expanded its TV footprint with the 2016 launch of Viceland. They say Vice News tonight will end in September, when Vice's deal with HBO is up. But Vice is shopping a daily news show to other networks and platforms and is expected to announce a home for the show in coming weeks. It's going to be a different show, apparently. Meanwhile, the company is at work on a news-centric show for Hulu that is yet to be announced. I just don't see it anymore. I really don't. Vice was this edgy upstart. It was where the cool kids wanted to be. And I was typically ahead of the market in a lot of circumstances with technology, and I had an opportunity to do a deal with Google, do a deal with some other news companies I'm not going to name, or Vice. I chose Vice for a reason. It was the right choice. Vice was growing like crazy and doing awesome stuff. Fortunately, Changes happened too soon. And now, once again, we are seeing this, Vice was supposed to be the CNN of the street. It was supposed to take over and kind of displace everybody. And here we are. Now Vice News has been canceled. They say, I believe they're talking about, we'll just read this. This is interesting. The ambitious new project, part of an expansive multi-year deal with HBO, allowed Vice to significantly expand its newsroom, filling it with journalists who would report and produce 4 half-hour shows each week. The company recruited Tirangel, previously editor of Bloomberg's Business Week, to oversee the creation and execution of the show. But despite attracting a young audience of over 500,000 viewers per episode, according to data from Nielsen, and winning 5 news and documentary Emmys in 3 years, the show has struggled to break out in a crowded landscape of Trump-era TV news. Its busiest moment came with its 2017 coverage of the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. Yeah, we can talk about the double standard. They embedded with these people for 3 days and everyone cheered them on. They won awards for it. I go to one sit-down interview and decide not to publish anything because I didn't think anything relevant came of it. And they lord that over me nonstop. It's just complete and total nonsense. They say HBO had already decided not to renew Vice, a daily news show, and it began to make less sense for the network as it doubled down on drama and comedy under its new leadership. So we get it. Vice News is done, but I want to highlight some important issues. Simon Ostrovsky tweeted, "The period under Tarangel's stewardship coincided with a major loss of interest in Vice News' output among its core viewership, in my view." Completely agree. Simon Ostrovsky did a fantastic job on the ground in Ukraine. Danny Gold did some amazing reporting on the ground in the Middle East, in Israel and Palestine during some major conflicts, and they both left. Simon's now with PBS Newswire. I'm not surprised. You get rid of Danny and I have had some Twitter arguments, but for the most part, I think he's done really fantastic work, especially in the Middle East. Simon Ostrovsky as well has done really amazing work. And you remove these actual journalists who are actually on the ground. Whether or not we have political disagreements is besides the point. They did great work. You remove them and bring in these young people, and it just became bad. It really did. And there's a lot of controversy now. I'm not going to get into some of the controversies, but Danny Gold said, "Look at you, all diplomatic." Simon responds, "This is obviously a self-serving tweet since I quit soon after he was hired. But I still think it's true. People talked about Vice News in 2014 to 2015 when we were there. Others tried to imitate us. That's no longer the case." And he's right. Vice News launched early 2014. And yes, Danny did, I remember there was this piece he did on swatting. Huge. The Ferguson coverage I did was huge. Coincidentally, the last thing I did for Vice News. I did a few documentaries that broke 1 million, some that got a couple million. My Vice News, I did a documentary for Vice News on Kim.com, which was just before the official launch of Vice News, but under the Vice News title. 5 or 6 million views. My reporting in Ukraine, Venezuela was the lead up to the launch of Vice News, and it was this period where the people were just talking nonstop about the great things. And I will say, the peak came with Simon Ostrovsky's reporting in Ukraine, nothing from me, and it came with they did a documentary in the Middle East called The Islamic State, which was huge. So I left near the end of 2014, having done all this Ferguson coverage, and went to Fusion, and they did carry on doing some really epic coverage that was getting tons of press. And then it just kind of burned out. So here's what I want to do. The last thing I want to do is I want to go through this. Do I not have the thread? Okay, the thread's right here. Let me see if I can just get it from the beginning. This is from Elizabeth Hansen. Actually, let me do this because I want to make sure I have her title correct. She's Business Models for Local News. That's what her title says. Harvard HBS, Harvard Sociology. Here's what she tweeted. "There was no commercial business model that could have saved most news publishers. This is not a case of product commodification. It's a case of total de-commercialization of news as an industry. Internet platform economics were going to swamp the majority of publishers no matter what. There is no market for their products anymore, not because they couldn't make one, but because that's not how internet economics work. Even with an early high paywall and an aggressive pivot to reader revenue, the cost of print and delivery would still not be covered in a majority of small, mid-sized newspaper publishers." I just want to clarify, she keeps putting these parentheses, which are irrelevant. I'm trying to ignore. "Add in the aggressive roll-ups, consolidation, asset stripping, and I think there isn't much small, mid-sized publishers could have done to save themselves from digital disruption. No doubt, first click free helped kill the business model for small and mid-sized news publishers, Facebook was the nail in the coffin. But gas in the fire was private equity and the industry consolidation. In fact, I think many more small, mid-sized news publishers would still have a decent business were it not for the brutal managerial economics of private equity ownership. It's tempting to apply disruptive innovation theory to all cases of technical change, but also dangerous when bigger secular trends are afoot. Even digital native commercial news publishers have been struggling, which signals underlying digital news economics mostly suck. No, it means you're not playing the system right. I'm doing better than ever. Subverse is expanding. Revenue is wonderful. And we're avoiding playing up to any of the extremes. Absolutely. Subverse is pretty run-of-the-mill center straight news reporting. And things are going great. You couldn't figure it out. You were too big to pivot and you're falling apart. This is what happens. So why the subscription model needs to be what you do from the ground up. She ends by saying, takeaway. The news industry is going through decommercialization due to consolidation and internet economics, not commodification and disruption. We need a new set of non-market policies and strategies for reconstructing the news ecosystem. Well, there you go. They couldn't do it. The business models didn't work and they failed. So I'll leave it there. Long story short, HBO. No more Vice News tonight. That's the latest. Stick around. I got more segments coming up shortly and I will see you soon.